So what is the Turing test? Well, the Turing test basically starts off in 1950 with this idea. It's kind of it's very primitive in nature. But the idea is that Turing suggested that you had a room. And in the room, you had a mail slot on each side. And on one mail slot went to a room with another human in it. And that human would answer the question and respond. On the other one, you'd put something through a mail slot. But in this one, a human on the other side, or perhaps the computer itself, would somehow receive the message and process it and would write a response. And it would hand it back. Now, we can kind of think about this as sort of the idea of like two chat rooms. One chat room has a person on the end, and the other chat room has a computer on the other end, or some sort of instant messaging or whatever. Well, what Turing suggested that if the computer could do the exact same thing as what the person did, and the person in the middle was unable to differentiate which is a computer and which is a person. And they did this, and they had this experiment going, and they said, no, I think that's a person. I think that is a person writing those messages. I can't really tell which one's the computer. They both strike me as being people. Then you would have to conclude that the computer is performing functionally the same thing as a human, which is a thoughtful conversation. And so what happens is Turing is essentially suggesting that if a computer can functionally behave like a human, then we have to be able to conclude that it is doing what a human does, which is think. Now, in the modern day, we can actually see examples of this where Turing had no idea, how far, and he actually thought it would be accomplished a lot sooner than it was. But there actually was recently an effort, and they do this an annual prize called the Leibniz Prize, in which they're trying to prove that a computer can do this. It's all part of artificial intelligence and trying to create better computers. But there was recently a computer that it passed the Turing test, and I saw an article on it, and I'm going to put the link here below. So it'll be in this module, but it actually did pass the Turing test, and it was where they thought that the computer behaved and talked like that of a teenage kid, and they thought that while it performed in a way that they thought it was believable as that, and so it was in fact thinking. And what Turing suggests is if you can't tell the difference, you have to conclude it's thinking. Now, why? Well, some of you say, well, we're humans and we think. That's not what thought is. Well, first of all, there's a difference between, I want to first off start off with, there's a practical issue with, some people would say that a computer could never get that good, that you couldn't tell a difference between a human and a computer. That's a possibility. Now, they're saying that they have accomplished that, so I don't know. But the case is that, that's one issue. But the other one is the idea that if you could program a computer to that level, would what it's doing be called thinking? And for Turing and others, they said, yes, it is thinking. Why is it thinking? Well, it's doing the same thing you and I are doing. It's taking in information, it's processing it, it's giving you back an answer. While you may have an experience that goes along with it, the computer is doing the same thing, and I don't know what the experience is like, but we have to assume it's having one. Suppose, for example, tomorrow you were to, wake up tonight, in the middle of the night, a bright light shining, and UFOs came in, not UFOs, but aliens entered your bedroom, and they said, we're here to examine you as a human, right? This is right out of some sort of tabloid magazine type of thing, exactly what your crazy uncle told you happened to him. But they're there to examine you and interview you. And they talk and they converse and they do all this stuff, and they seem very intelligent. Well, would you say they're not thinking because they're not a human? No, you would assume that they're thinking beings, even though they may experience thought, even though they may not even be carbon-based life forms. Maybe they're silicon-based life forms, like a computer. But yet we would conclude that they are thinking. We would have no reason not to think that they're not thinking entities. And so what he says, if they can perform functionally the same, we have to conclude it's thinking. I don't know what the experience is like. I don't know any of that, but we have to conclude it's thinking. What's interesting is computers are actually been programmed to do things like solve problems that humans can't solve, to analyze themselves, your car is self-diagnostic in most cases. Some cars, you can just, you can turn over the key a certain way and it'll actually beep and ding and it'll tell you what the problem is. I mean, you may have a machine and a mechanic do it, but in some cases it will tell you what the exact diagnosis is of your car's problem. They're self-diagnosing. In fact, there are computers being designed to design computers because they actually can think about the problem in a way that a human doesn't and can solve it in a better way. And so what happens is we can, if a computer can do this, we have to conclude that it is in fact thinking, is what Turing says, because it is performing the same way and we can't differentiate the two. We must by default call it a thinking entity.